Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's edition of the Maconi Setup Shop A-Fix Tutorials. This week we are looking at the Chicagoland Speedway, so strap in and let's get to it. Quite the interesting dynamic with the timing and the weather and everything else that goes along with this car. As you guys know, this car does not like the bumps with the diffuser. It's pretty sketchy. We'll get into that very shortly. I did this run in 5th gear. As you can see on the bottom left, it's not going to move. A gear is going to be in 5th all the time. I really don't see a world where you're going to be using 4th unless it's like really late into a run and the tires are just gone. Um, the RPM is just way too high in my honest opinion to even be useful, and plus you're wound up pretty good in 5th gear, and then I mean, when I was up to speed, I was shifting pretty much before I exited the corner too, so I just don't really see 4th gear being an option really ever. Um, for qualifying, I that third lane in 1 and 2 and the bottom in 3 and 4 I think is still the fastest. Um, I tried a Mach Q run, like running the bottom both ends, and I was definitely faster running the top in 1 and 2, bottom 3 and 4. Want to point this out though, if you watch this lap very closely, watch what happens running turn 3 here. We all know that there's this bump down in 3 and 4. Okay. Uh, my very first attempt, I went over that bump. I absolutely nosed it into the fence and killed it. The second run that I did, I was about 8 laps in, hit that bump again, and about mirrored it. Okay, so I wanted to at least get a lap up there and not wreck the car so that I could show you guys just how, I don't want to say violent, but just how like sketchy that bump can be um, with the low air pressures. The diffuser, I mean, once it hits that bump, I mean, it's really sketchy. The first and second lane in 3 and 4 is relatively smooth. However, when you get to the middle of 3 and 4, the car, and again, this just could be because I'm by myself. I don't have the dirty air. I don't have the extra downforce of the draft, but I'm getting pretty free in the middle of the corner. So what I think is a good thing to do, especially since when you're in the draft, you're going to be doing this anyway, is to hold like 3/4 throttle roughly, like somewhere in that range. Like you don't want to be full throttle in the middle, because if that rear end does step out in your full throttle, it's just going to spin the rear tires even more aggressively, and then it's going to be really hard to control. Whereas if you can anticipate it and you're already feathering the throttle, whether you're half, 3/4, or wherever, when it does want to step out like that, the rear tires aren't going to be spinning as much. It's going to hook up a lot easier, and then you'll be able to get off the corner. Again, with the dirty air, I'm not sure if it's even going to get loose. I feel like it would have to, regardless, just because of the fundamentals of the setup. But if you're not in the draft, or if you're by yourself for whatever reason, or you've got some room, I mean, I was getting pretty free throughout. Like, I did a 20 lap run earlier, and I was still fighting it 20 laps in. So I feel like that's just a characteristic of the car, whether it's the car setup or just the timing. This isn't a very hot track session with it starting at like 6 o'clock at night or whatever the time is, 5:50, right? Just a little lack of grip. As we all know, this tire loves heat. The hotter it is, the grippier it is, the colder it is, well, the sketchier it's going to be. So it just kind of is what it is. For 1 and 2 here, when you're running the top like this, and again, you're going to see a lot of people running the top. Typically, if you're going to run the third lane, like in my honest opinion, at least in my past experiences, I feel like the third lane in 1 and 2 is the better lane. Okay, and as you can see, 8 laps in, I hit that bump, and I'm still like sketchy, right? Anyway, back to turn 1. I've always found, at least with Chicagoland, that if you're going to run the third lane, when you get to the exit, okay, and you cross the seam, I feel like that's when it's like it just gets tight. I don't know. There's not a big banking difference, but it's like once, like, it feels good, and then once the right front gets onto the seam, it just loses grip. Okay. Um, I've always tried to, if I'm gonna run that third lane, I want to hold in that third lane as long as possible, so that when I do track out on exit, I'm far enough into the corner, or like to the exit of the corner, where it's not going to punish me. But I find that if you cross that seam like 60 to 70% of the way through the corner, you kind of just lose the nose. So when I'm racing, what I like to do is, if I want to run the top, I try to enter on the third and fourth lane. That way I don't have to worry about the seam, right? I'm never going to have to worry about the right front crossing the seam unless for whatever reason I've got so much wheel in it that I'm actually turning down and cross the seam that way. Um, but yeah, typically the bottom in 1 and 2 is still really fast, and that's where you're going to save tire. However, the run that you get up here, um, like, see how I'm turning down here. So now, like, late exit, that, like, at that point, getting tight there isn't really going to hurt me because we're pretty much on the straightaway. I forget where I was going with that. Anyway, probably wasn't that important. Here's a little pit road entrance here. Again, fresher tires. It's all feel, guys. Like, it's, I don't really know how else to explain it. I don't really look for a mark. Like, I get to the center of the corner essentially, and it's like, okay, like, it's time to hit the brakes, you know. Um, but that, again, that was a little pit road entry. Um, but yeah, running this top seam here, like in a race situation, I'm not worried about it getting tight, right? If I'm right on the seam like that, you see how smooth the car was on exit. Um, Again, you're going to be forced to move around here, especially with the dirty air. You can't run directly behind somebody. 3 and 4, it's always been about that bottom. I know with the old car, the Gen 6, I mean, the longer you could paint that line in 3 and 4 with your left side tires, it would just pull you around. And it's still the same here. Um, there's a lot of grip on that line, and when you hit it right, I find that my steering wheel has like half the input that I normally would if I'm not on it, right? Like that white line down there just kind of pulls you around. And again, here, like you can see, I'm anticipating that bump, and I'm still like, this is 8 laps in. You know what I mean? Like, I've got plenty of heat in the tires at this point. Just the way that that bump in 3 and 4 is, like, once that diffuser hits the racetrack, like, it's sketchy. So whenever you're racing, definitely be careful of that. If you're on the outside of somebody at 3 and 4, I would do everything I can to try to run that second lane at least. Typically, anybody who is on the bottom here is going to want to run the white line in 3 and 4 because of what I was just talking about. There is a lot of grip down there. Um, like, I feel like I've got a lot of steering wheel in it just to run that second lane, but when I run the bottom in 3 and 4, like get on that white line, I feel like I've got half that steering input. Alright guys, quick look at the tires here. Again, this was after 10 laps, 95, 95, 95, 93, so yeah, a little skatey. Again, that bump in 3 and 4, definitely going to wear the rear tires out a little bit. I feel like if I was to do 10 laps running the bottom, uh, both my rear tires would be better than my front tires, but I did slide a good bit there, especially off of 4 a couple times running that bump. Um, Again, to me, this is still one of my favorite racetracks to race at. Um, when we first had the introduction to dynamic track, it was at Chicagoland Speedway, and it was the first time that you could move around and race wherever, and oh my god, it was unbelievable. Um, Even with all the patches and band-aids, as I like to call them, this track is still very racy. I've always said the first and third lane around here is the better one. Before, the second and fourth lanes were never really competitive, but now there's enough grip that I feel like you can run just about everywhere. It's all about managing your tires. The farther up the racetrack you go in 1 and 2, the more aggressive you can be, but the more aggressive you are means you're just going to shred your tires, right? You're going to put a lot of heat on the right front. So it's a battle. You got to manage it. I always say, like, if you have time, like, if you're not racing anybody, run the bottom because you're naturally going to save tires that way. I personally wouldn't want to come off the bottom in 3 and 4 just because of how much grip there is naturally on the white line. But again, like, depending on how the racetrack takes rubber and the timing of the server and everything else like that, you may be able to run around. I would hope that the more rubber that gets built up into the racetrack in 3 and 4 helps with that bump. But if that bump, if you guys are running these races throughout the week, it doesn't matter how many laps you do. If you find that that bump is still a pain in the rear end for you, I would just try to make it a mission to run no higher than the second lane. it kind of goes across like the third and fourth lanes, right? Like there's really no escaping it when you run that high, which sucks because like you can run the truck or Xfinity car and really make some good lap time running the third and fourth lane because it's not as aggressive on the bump. But with the underbody of this car and the diffuser and everything else like that, um, that bump just seems way more aggressive. And once the rear tires kind of come off the ground, that split second, like that's where you really have your hands full, and you don't have that in other cars. But the first and second lane are very competitive. The first lane in 3 and 4 has always been the go-to because of how much grip is on that white line. Like I said, it kind of just once you get the left sides on the white line, it almost just pulls you around the racetrack for you. And that was about the only way to get around here back in the day. Everybody would fight for the bottom, and uh, just different times, different times. But still very competitive. There's still a lot of grip down there, and that's usually the go-to. 1 and 2, you can run pretty much wherever. Like I said, the higher up the racetrack you go, typically the faster you're going to be. And all you want to do is try to manage your tires. Try not to abuse the top too early because it's going to hurt you in the long run. But if you're getting caution-filled races, chances are you're going to want to run the top or be on the top in 1 and 2 um, because of all the momentum that you can carry down the back straightaway. Alright guys, that'll just about do it for this week's video. As always, if you find that this video was helpful, please consider leaving a like. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave a comment down below. I check them throughout the week constantly. Again, these videos are to help you guys. You know, it's fun for me to do this, but I just want them to be informative for you guys so that you guys can feel like you're better prepared or a step ahead when you go into these races. Practice. I always talk about practicing. It's the only way you're going to get better is just to run laps, you know. But I hope this is a good enough guide to help you with that. And lastly, if you're not already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you can see these videos every Monday when they're posted on the Maconi YouTube page. All right, guys, best of luck this week, and we'll see you on the track.